When people talk about end times prophecy, one passage comes up again and again: Ezekiel 38 and 39. It describes a coalition of nations led by a figure called Gog of the land of Magog, and among the nations listed is Persia. Today, Persia is known as Iran. So naturally, people ask, are current events in the Middle East fulfilling this prophecy? Tonight, I want to look at that carefully. In Ezekiel 38, the prophet describes Gog of the land of Magog leading a coalition that includes Persia, Cush, Put, Gomer, and Beth-Togarmah. This coalition attacks Israel, but God intervenes dramatically. It's a powerful prophetic scene. The question is, who are these nations today? Let's begin with Persia. Historically, Persia was the ancient empire that ruled much of the Near East. In 1935, Persia officially became known internationally as Iran. So when Ezekiel mentions Persia, most scholars agree it refers geographically to modern Iran. Now here's where history matters. Iran was not always governed the way it is today. In the 7th century, Islamic forces expanded rapidly out of the Arabian Peninsula. They conquered the Persian Empire. Over time, Islam became deeply integrated into Persian society. Centuries later, in 1979, the Islamic Revolution reshaped Iran entirely. Ayatollah Khomeini overthrew the Shah and established an Islamic theocracy. Sharia law became deeply embedded in governance. Since then, Iran's government has taken a strongly anti-Israel stance. Iran does not recognize Israel as a legitimate state, and in recent years, tensions between Iran and Israel, as well as Iran and the United States, have escalated. Iran supports groups like Hezbollah and Hamas. It is also part of what some call the axis of resistance, which includes alliances and proxy relationships across the region. So yes, Iran is openly hostile toward Israel. That much is clear. Now let's examine the other names. Magog, often associated by some modern interpreters with Russia. Why? Because ancient Jewish historian Josephus connected Magog with the Scythians, who lived north of Israel. Some suggest that points toward modern Russia. Others caution that this connection is debated. Meshach and Tubal are sometimes linked to Moscow and Tobolsk, but linguistically, many scholars argue these names referred to regions in ancient Anatolia, modern-day Turkey. Gomer and Beth-Togarmah are also often connected to areas in or around modern Turkey. Cush is usually associated with regions south of Egypt, often Sudan and possibly Ethiopia. Put is commonly linked to Libya or North Africa. So when people map this prophecy onto today's world, they often suggest Russia, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Turkey, and possibly other Middle Eastern regions. And here's where it gets interesting. Some of these nations do have diplomatic or military relationships today. Iran and Russia cooperate in Syria. Turkey has complex relationships with Russia and Iran. Sudan has had ties with Iran in the past. Libya has experienced Russian involvement in recent conflicts. So yes, there are connections. But connections are not the same as a unified invasion coalition. Let's look carefully at 4 key factors. First, is Iran hostile toward Israel? Yes. Iran's leadership openly opposes Israel. There have been missile exchanges and proxy conflicts. That aligns with hostility. Second, is there a clear, unified coalition like Ezekiel describes? Not exactly. There are alliances, there are shared interests, there is cooperation in some areas, but there is no overwhelming, formalized, unified military coalition preparing to invade Israel together as one force. The relationships are complex and sometimes unstable. Third, is Israel living securely without walls? Ezekiel describes Israel as dwelling securely. Today, Israel is highly defended. It has border security, advanced missile defense systems, and strong military readiness. Some argue without walls is symbolic of peace and confidence. Others take it more literally. Either way, Israel today lives under constant security awareness, not relaxed peace. Fourth, is a massive invasion forming? Currently, Russia is heavily occupied with Ukraine. Regional conflicts exist, but there is no visible, large-scale, multinational army assembling for a direct land invasion of Israel as described in Ezekiel. Yes, Iran opposes Israel. Yes, alliances and regional partnerships are forming in various ways. Yes, geopolitical tensions exist. But key elements described in Ezekiel's prophecy are not fully present. There is no clearly unified northern coalition. There is no peaceful, unsuspecting Israel. There is no visible, massive invasion force forming. Prophecy interpretation is widely debated among Christians. Some believe Ezekiel 38 to 39 is still future. Some believe it was symbolically fulfilled. Others place it during the tribulation period. But responsible interpretation requires restraint. We must be careful not to force headlines into prophecy. History shows that many generations believed they were watching prophecy unfold in their time, and many were mistaken. It is true that Iran, like several regional powers, opposes Israel. It is true that alliances are shifting. It is true that the Middle East remains unstable. But the specific details of Ezekiel's prophecy include elements that are not clearly present today. So while speculation is understandable, certainty is premature. The Bible calls believers to watchfulness, not panic. Awareness, not sensationalism. These discussions matter, but they require humility. Because prophecy is not just about predicting wars. It is about understanding God's purposes in history. And history is rarely as simple as headlines suggest.